Hey guys, it's Drew again. If you could go back in time with the knowledge that you had now to any one specific day in history to pick up some baseball artifacts legally, not cards, but actual artifacts, what day would you pick? Well, for me, I believe it would be a specific spring day in 1960. Do you want to know why? Let's check it out. On April 24th, 1960, there was a public auction. Anybody could come. It was well advertised. It was advertised in the New York Times, in the New Yorker, in different big places. This auction was taking place in Brooklyn, 1960. What were they auctioning off? Well, as you know, Ebbets Field was still standing, but it was no longer used. The beloved Dodgers had already moved out to Los Angeles and established a new fan base. Hearts were broken. People were sad. Their team that had struggled and been them bums for years and years finally won in 1955, and only a few years later, they were no longer there. Ebbets Field stood as a monument to history past, but unfortunately, it was set to be torn down. So a local person decided to do an auction. He had obtained the rights to everything within the stadium and did an auction of anything they could find. He scrounged around and found all this stuff. Only 200, there's estimates up to 1,000, but probably closer to 200 or 300 people showed up for this public auction. Well, what were they auctioning off? Everything, anything that they could find, they were auctioning off. Stuff that included like balls, broken bats, the bases, caps from ushers, seats, full rows, banners that had hung from the flagpoles, photos, anything. Well, the auction starts off, and honestly, people aren't spending money. Not a lot. Things were selling so cheap. In fact, most things sold for about $5. They had flower pots filled with dirt from the infield. Could you imagine dirt from the infield? They were selling them for 25 cents. They were such a hit, they actually started giving them away because nobody really wanted them. Why was it the perspective changed so much? There wasn't many people there. The Dodgers were beloved for decades. Everyone loved them. They didn't hate the Dodgers for leaving. They hated that the Dodgers left. People there, they lived and died, they breathed, they walked in the days off or before and after the game with the players that lived amongst them. They were a beloved part of their history, their culture. But they were gone and nobody came to grab a piece. It'd be really cool to have a chair. It'd be cool to have a broken bat that was found, or some dirt, or a banner. How awesome would that be? A banner that flew up above. Could you imagine the 1941 pennant when they went to the World Series and sadly lost? Just hanging in your house because, well, it was $10. I don't know. It'd just be really awesome to do. Well, there was one item that most people were there to see. What was that item? It was the actual cornerstone where the stadium was built in 1912 on that cornerstone. They opened the auctioning bid. There was a left bid for $600. $600. Remember, most things were going for only $5 or around that area. $600. The bid was left by Warren Giles, the then National League president. There was no other bids. He won for $600. He had the cornerstone eventually shipped up to Cooperstown, where it still resides today, where you can go visit it. But if you've ever seen this cornerstone, there's something very peculiar about it. It's not just a beautiful stone that says Ebbets Field, 1912. There's a huge hole in it. Why was there a hole? Well, right before this auction, a city worker remembered who was there at the opening day in 1912. They buried a time capsule inside of the cornerstone, and they decided publicly they were going to take it out. So they started hitting it with a sledgehammer. Nothing. They hit it harder. Nothing. Finally, they got a construction worker with a big sledgehammer who just wailed on it. As you can see in these pictures, they were hitting it hard. In fact, they missed their mark, and there's still marks from the sledgehammer, not where the hole is, that you can see. So when they opened it up and they pulled out, there was a box. It was a copper box, and they were really excited. What was in this time capsule? Well, there was a newspaper from June 5th, 1912, the date it was dedicated. There was a postcard signed by the current Brooklyn Dodgers team from 1912. There was pennies from 1912, uncirculated, that were still inside there. There was photographs. There was a photograph of Charles Ebbets that was inside of there. There was all these documents and all put inside this time capsule, placed to be found, assuming hundreds of years later. Little did they know, it was less than 50 years later when they found it. Well, when they pull out this copper box and they open it up, sadness. What did they find? Well, honestly, dust. They didn't really seal it properly. So any of the paper items, the newspaper, the photographs, the postcards, they had all basically disintegrated, given up to time. What was in there? 5 pennies. So when it comes down to it, the million or equal of millions of dollars to build Ebbets Field comes down to a sad memory of some dirt they can't give away and 5 pennies. You can still go and see the Great Cornerstone in Cooperstown. Altogether, with hundreds and hundreds of items that were sold, they raised $2,300. Why were they raising $2,300? Well, they took that money and they donated it to the local Little League. It went to buy gloves, uniforms for little kids. It took a sandlot and built it to an actual baseball field. Bases to be able to pay for umpires. It built a little community within the community. So was it sad that I wasn't there, that you weren't there, that people weren't seeing in the future what the literally millions of dollars potentially was if you could buy seats or buy the bases or buy the banners that were on the flagpoles? People weren't buying that stuff. They were just paying pennies, a couple of dollars. Was it sad that we weren't there? Yeah, it's kind of sad. It'd be kind of cool to be there to witness it. It'd be really awesome to have that little connection within my little collection here. But what it wasn't sad was that this Little League was able to play. It inspired these little kids to know that greats like Pee Wee Reese or Duke Snider or the great Jackie Robinson walked in amongst this, and within the items that were sold that they dealt with on a daily basis for decades was sold so they could play a little baseball. So maybe that inspired those little kids. I thought this was kind of a cool story. I figured I'd share it with you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you were there, if you had the money, what would you have gotten? Would you gotten a seat? That's probably what I would have gotten. It would have been really neat to have that pot full of dirt just because, I don't know, something that's so worthless, dirt, that's got so much meaning, because when you mix nostalgia in it, everything has meaning. Anyway, I appreciate you coming along for the journey. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. But until next time, you guys be good.